Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where every day I turn to a different industry and explore the impacts of technology. Now, today I'm going to be chatting with David Bartels, and he is one of America's top 100 real estate agents. And he believes that the US real estate sector is primed and ready for a phase of deep recalibration as we enter the post-pandemic world. And it's all going to be powered specifically by blockchain technology. And there's so many reasons why I'm excited to get David onto the podcast today, because there is a lot of hype around property tech, or Proptech as it's most commonly known, and also how blockchain is almost tailor-made for real estate, or bringing it into the 21st century. So we've got the tech angle there, and David is also a distinguished expert in areas of real estate negotiations, distressed property solutions, foreclosure avoidance, real estate investing. So because of all that knowledge and insight, I think he's going to have some interesting takes on how the current pandemic has significantly impacted the global real estate sector, but also, most importantly, the role of technologies such as blockchain and how that's going to impact and transform an entire industry. But hey, you don't tune in to hear me waffle on, do you? Getting all excited about technological transformation. So buckle up and hold on tight, and I will beam your ears all the way to California in the US so we can speak with David right now. So a massive warm welcome to the show, David. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Well, I'm a guy that's runs a real estate company in the United States. And we have been seeing a big evolution, and we're really out to change the world a little bit. But in my regular way of doing business, what we really focus on is helping buyers and sellers of real estate transact business in a way that's a great experience for them.
And you're doing just that. But for anyone hearing about Help-U-Sell for the very first time, can you tell me a little bit more about the kind of problems that you're solving and what makes you unique from other solutions out there and how you're leveraging technology?
Well, Help-U-Sell is really our legacy name. We are in the process of making the transition to Everhome Realty. But the concept of what we're trying to do is the same. So at Help-U-Sell, we are a franchise of that company. And to do the kinds of things that we want to do, we have to get outside of that franchise model. And so we've made the difficult decision after many years to do that. And we expect to do that in the next couple of weeks. And we're going to become Everhome. But what we're doing in the concept of Help-U-Sell, and in many ways, Help-U-Sell, is to figure out ways to solve some problems. The big problem that we're currently solving right now, and we're really excited about, and I'm sure we'll get into it a little bit today, is sellers, helping sellers leverage the technology that's currently available to real estate agents that will allow them to, sell their home. So currently, and I hope I'm not getting ahead of myself, but currently, when you take a look at technology, 93% of people are using the internet to help buy a house, but only 8% of sellers are using the internet to actually sell their house. And we wanted to find out why, and that's really the problem that we've been solving. But until now, what we've been focused on is set fee real estate transactions, especially for sellers. And what that means is, if it costs the same amount of time, money, and effort to sell a $300,000 house as it does to sell a $600,000 house, shouldn't the fee to sell both houses be the same? And we just obviously thought the answer to that was yes. And so we came up with a flat fee model. In the United Kingdom, you've got Purple Bricks, as an example of how that works. And they made a run at the United States not that long ago and retreated. But that is really the concept of a set fee versus a variable commission based on the percentage of the sale price.
That's a great point there that I've never even thought about. That when you are looking for a house, you're right. The overwhelming majority of everyone listening will be going on the internet looking for a home, but when they want to sell it, they end up paying some estate agents, they call them over here, a huge
Right.
inflated figure to do the work for them. But can you share your vision to actually empower prospective home sellers to market and sell the homes themselves thanks to this technology?
Yeah, let me give you a little background to tell you, that maybe it was a wow for me, maybe to be a wow for you. And that
Yeah.
was in 1981. That was the year I graduated from high school, by the way. So a long time ago. The people were, and before the internet, obviously, people sold their house for sale by owner, which is what we call an unrepresented seller in the United States, 15% of the time. In 2019, with Zillow, and an amazing amount of technology being available, Zillow's been in business for over 10 years in the United States. What we have seen is only 8% of people are now selling their house for sale by owner. And I wanted to know why. Why, if the technology exists, why don't sellers sell their home themselves? And we found out there were two reasons for that. And this is where the problem solving comes in. Number one is they wanted the massive exposure that is represented by putting it in the multiple listing service, which is a service that aggregates the listings and shares it with other realtors and then syndicates it to thousands of public portals all over the world. So anybody anywhere in the world looking for a house can find that house and gather information about it for the purpose of perhaps buying it. And so what we found is they wanted that exposure. And by being in the multiple listing service, they would get about 400% more traffic than being in Zillow alone. So we solved that problem. We said, okay, let's put you in the multiple listing service. You'll get the same massive exposure that you would get if you listed your house with a realtor for 5 or 6% of the selling price. And you'll dramatically increase not only the odds that you'll sell your house fast, but you'll sell it for more money. We charge $450 up front for that. So they get the same flexibility and control and cost savings of for sale by owner, but they get the same massive exposure of the multiple listing service. And people like that. But that wasn't enough. There are a lot of services in the United States and probably in Europe that allow you to put it into a similar service to advertise the home for a set fee like that. But what we really realized the reason is that the complexity of a transaction today, if you look at it from a consumer's perspective, it's probably the biggest financial transaction that they're ever going to make. And they're afraid that they're going to make a mistake, and the liability and loss, the financial loss that might come from that is intimidating to them. And they begrudgingly hire an agent to do what they feel like they ought to be able to do themselves and overpay them to do what they feel that they ought to do themselves because they don't feel like they have any choice. So the way that we solve that problem is that we collaborate with the seller. So they take the calls, they coordinate the showings, they answer the questions about the house, just like if they were in a for sale by owner. But when it comes time for an offer to come in, whether or not it's coming from a buyer who's represented or a buyer who is not represented, that offer comes directly to us, and we step in and fully represent that seller for that transaction. We handle all the negotiations, the paperwork, the legal disclosures, the escrow, the title, the inspections, the contingency removals, the renegotiations that take place, and literally usher them through the entire closing process, just like if they were paying us 6% to represent them. And through that process, we created a hybrid somewhere between do-it-yourself, unrepresented, for sale by owner, and what a lot of people think is overpaying for full services to do something they feel like the technology should allow them to do. We call it for sale with seller. And our question is what percentage of the market is going to be excited about doing that? And the feedback has been pretty astounding.
And I love that. I love that story, how you followed your passion and the story behind the company. And of course, here in 2020, property tech or Proptech is a big buzzword. And you're one of America's top 100 real estate agents who believe that US real estate sector is primed and ready for a phase of deep recalibration in a post-pandemic world. But this is where things get exciting for me, especially because this is a tech podcast. It's powered specifically by blockchain technology. So can you expand on that?
Well, I can. There's actually a couple of Proptech technologies that are here. So imagine for a minute being able. So when we started doing this, when we started creating this, and we started offering these services to consumers, it really started to take off. And we're like, we need to run fast with this and expand it all across the country and maybe across the world to be able to offer this to people. But it's a labor intensive process. And so we realized that we needed to develop technology to really help us scale and to communicate it as an option. I mean, just because we've built a better mousetrap doesn't mean people are going to beat a path to our door to buy it or use the service. We still got to go out and sell it. We still got to communicate it and market it to the population so that they know that this is an option that exists. And so we developed some technology that will allow somebody from their phone or from their computer to literally take about 20 minutes and input the field, go through the question tree, and list their house on the multiple listing service in about 20 minutes with a stop for quality control on their own. And through that process, they are going to be able to do, we literally leverage the same technology that a real estate agent has and give it to the consumer for the very first time. That is very exciting. And it's really hard to find somebody who is a homeowner that might one day sell their house that isn't excited about the concept of being able to do for themselves what they have to pay a realtor to do for them today. So that's the first piece. When we started developing that piece, and some of this happened by accident. Our CTO is Ryan Fabian. He's a brilliant guy, and he's one of the few dozen people in the United States that are really skilled in blockchain development. And the thought occurred to us, in the development stage of this idea, that we ought to be doing everything in blockchain. Why don't we just build that program in blockchain? Because when you list a house for sale and you ultimately sell a house, the paperwork all by itself is spread out among different parties. When you do listing paperwork, you have all the listing docs, and then you have your offer docs, and then you have the buyer agent disclosures, and then the selling agent, the listing agent disclosures, and then when escrow is open, then you've got another set of documents, and then the lender's got their set of documents, and then you got title insurance, that has their set of insurance, and it's all over the place. And we said, well, if we built it on blockchain and we started gathering that information as we started to go, and we were able to store that on blockchain rather than passing a file all around, that increases the likelihood for errors and miscommunication about things, that if we put it into blockchain and made it accessible to the right parties and only those documents that they could get, that we would be able to run the escrow through the blockchain as well without having to start all over again, and then also finish it with title insurance. And we decided that we were going to build the world's first blockchain escrow and title company to complement our listing services. And here in the United States, the listing is controlled, or the escrow and title is controlled by the listing agent. And so it makes sense for us to develop consumer friendly and vendor friendly technology to better facilitate and to give everybody a better experience that not only minimizes mistakes and increases security, increases the ease of accessibility for authorized parties, but it also, as a result, ends up lowering costs, especially when it comes to title reinsurance, where you can't alter the title without getting access to the blockchain, which means eventually we will be able to eliminate the in-person verification that's taking place right now to make sure that you've got a clean title for the purposes of insurance. And it is an incredible road that we're going down, but we're receiving incredible enthusiasm for these thoughts so far.
And how long do you think it will be till something like this is in place with blockchain technology at the helm? How far away are we from this, would you say?
Well, I would say that we're within a year of being able to have the blockchain escrow completed.
Yeah.
And then it's going to be a little longer before we can do the title. And the reason the title is more tricky is because the way things are done in the United States is that you've got to be able to interface with the county title agencies. So every county has their own recording process that you have to go through. And so you have to get them online and bring them on board. So what we're focusing on doing is creating the template and ultimately work with some other companies. We're on the verge of partnering with a national title company right now. We're in fact in those discussions currently with them, and we think that we'll be able to successful in pulling that together, and we'll begin to create the standard for what blockchain escrow and title might look like, and then go out and recruit some local county recorder's office is to allow us to automate it. Most title is taking place online right now, and what we want to be able to do is integrate it with the blockchain and then lead an industry-wide standardization company, a standardization effort to create a single standard that we can then roll out to other county title recording companies all over the world. And it is our intent to license this technology to other title companies that are going to want to do that, so we can make blockchain title the standard of which title is conducted down the road.
And there's so much cool things happening in this world at the moment. And before you came on the podcast today, I did do a little bit of research on you guys, and I quickly learned that you also got a big belief in technological innovations that create a more consumer-centric model while addressing those legacy sector issues that have actually ended up placing too much power in the hands of the full-service agents. But can you expand on that as well?
Well, for sure. In a traditional agent, and I'm guilty of this too. I've had my share of this. Is when you go in and you have one model, and your model is it's cost you 6% to sell your house. We're going to put you on the multiple listing services, and there's a lot of real estate agents that think the homeowner works for them as opposed to the agent working for the seller, for the client. And I happen to think that I work for the client as opposed to the client working for me. And selling the house, even buying a house, but let's focus on selling the house for a moment, is really a collaborative process. And you have to do it in partnership with that home seller. And in the old days, I had our one way of doing business, and I'd go in, and my job in a competitive environment with other agents was to convince them that my way was better, that my solutions were going to better, that I was going to be a better representative of them to sell their house. And if I was successful, they would list their house with me, and then we'd go out and sell their house. Today, when I go out and I meet with a homeowner, instead of trying to convince them that the way that we've traditionally done business is the right way to do it, what I do is I go in and ask them some questions about what they want to do, what they hope to accomplish, what's the time frame, and how involved do they want to be. And as a result, we can match a strategy with what their objective is, and I can actually make a recommendation that best suits that homeowner's needs. So if they want to be more involved and the for sale with seller option is a better alternative for them, then we proceed with that. If they prefer not to be involved and they want the full service, then we proceed with that. If they want help with buying and not selling, or selling and not buying, then we do that. What we're able now to do is find out what they want and spend the rest of the time helping them get it, as opposed to try to persuade them that what they want is not the right thing because it doesn't match up with what I do. And that's the way the legacy real estate industry really works. It's a lot more fun and more successful.
And for anyone listening, just to bring to life everything that we've talked about today, could you tell me a little bit more about how your solution works by possibly sharing an example that will just enable everyone listening to almost compare and contrast that old and new way of doing things?
Well, for instance, if somebody is interested in doing for sale with seller, okay, that's where they're going to collaborate with us. And we have a conversation with them. We don't even have to go out to their house to be able to meet with them. So one of the things that what we have been able to do is we've been able to start list properties without ever even going out to the house. Everything is done virtually. It's either done by phone or through a virtual meeting. All the documents are done electronically. All the photos are passed back and forth electronically. That whole process has been electronic now and remote, and consumers really love that. And so what has been happening is that I've got an example right now where we sold the first time they did this, they did for sale with seller. We sold their house in a few days with multiple offers above list price. And then they said, a month later, they came back and said, we got another house. It was in a different part of the state that we didn't really have any coverage in. And so we were able to list that property, join the multiple listing service in that area. And we sold that one in a few days with multiple offers over list price. And then they had a third property that was closer to us. It was a bigger, more complicated transaction on 3 acres, which is unusual in the part of California that I live in. And we started out with the for sale with seller program, but it turned out to be a little more difficult. So what we did for them, which is what we offer to everybody, is that the $450 that they paid up front to cover our administrative costs, we were able to upgrade them to a full service option, take over everything, get our professional photography out there, the drones, the virtual tour, and be able to get it on the market. And we were able to move them in the full service capacity, and we're able to move them from getting virtually a very limited amount of traffic with full service. We have massive traffic going in there, and we think that it's going to sell we haven't sold it yet, but we expect to be able to sell that very quickly at a price that's higher than what they were hoping to be able to accomplish. And then the repeat and referral business has been an incredible aspect of what we've been able to do and building our brand as a result of doing the right thing for the consumers.
And what I love about you here, just listening to you talk, is this great vision for the future. And we are in a time of uncertainty at the moment. So to end on a good note, a positive note, what excites you about the role of technology and how it's going to transform this space? And also, are there any tech trends in particular that you can share with us today that you particularly find exciting?
Well, yeah, what is really exciting about what is happening is that we're basically able to leverage the technology and that we use as realtors been the exclusive domain. If you think about how real estate has changed over the years, you can see that change on the buy side. Remember, 93% of buyers are using the internet to find their house in most cases. But that hasn't translated on the seller side. And what we are basically doing is we're finally giving that technology to the seller to be able to participate more in that transaction. And we think that's revolution. And the reason it hasn't really come is to do that, it's going to change the model. These bigger companies that are out there don't want to let go of this traditional legacy way of doing business. And they know that once they give that technology or allow that consumer to have the technology, that they're going to suffer from massive commission suppression, that the commissions are going to start to come down. If you think about how technology has changed the way that travel is done and the way stocks are traded, that technology has not yet made it to the real estate business until now. And we like to say we're the Charles Schwab of the real estate industry. And we're basically putting, when the investment industry transformed, it was when a Charles Schwab came out and gave professional trader tools to individual investors. And that's what we're doing. We're taking professional marketing tools that are the domain of professional real estate agents, and we're now making it available to the consumer. And we think that's going to revolutionize everything. Now, in terms of trends, I think that you're gonna see massive change. You're going to see in the real estate industry, in the way that consumers transact, because consumers now are doing most of the work in finding the property. And once they understand how much that they're paying to a real estate agent through higher sale prices to sellers to help them buy a house that they virtually found, you're going to start to see some of those massive changes, and technology is going to continue to play a big role. I think that, where Proptech is concerned, I think what we're doing with our for sale with seller technology is going to be massively revolutionary. I think the blockchain escrow and title is going to be massively successful. I've been going to the National Association of Realtors conferences for many years. Every year there is they have some meetings around blockchain and how they're going to do it. And, my wife, who is a vice president and portfolio manager at Morgan Stanley and way smarter than I am, I remember calling her from the conference saying, how do we invest in blockchain without buying Bitcoin? How do we do it without the currency? How do we and do that? And I find it so interesting for me that a few years later, that nobody has really figured out how to bring blockchain into the real estate, world, and until now, and we are in fact investing in that blockchain technology without in fact investing in gambling, if you will, depending on your worldview, investing in the cryptocurrency part of it. So I think that you're going to start to see that manifest itself in the real estate in the manner in which we've described. And I couldn't be more excited about being part of the thought leadership that's taken us there.
It sounds like there's so much more to come. So I'd love to stay in touch with you and get you back on in, let's say, 6 months and follow you on that journey. But for anyone listening that would also like to keep up to speed with developments and everything that you're doing there, what's the best way of doing that, and also contacting your team if they've got any questions?
Yeah, sure. So you can email me at david@lowsetfee.com. lowsetfee.com. That's david@lowsetfee.com. You can also call me at 805-379-3300. And of course, you can learn more about us, online at lowsetfee.com. And soon you'll be able, in a couple of weeks, as soon as the state lets us, everhome.io.
Excellent. And one of the things I've been thinking about, you mentioned when you first came on the podcast, was the fact that 8% of prospective home sellers are grappling with the prospect of marketing and selling their homes themselves without enlisting the services of a full fee agent. I mean, something has just got to change there. And so I love how technology is changing that. And I'd be interested in how quickly it begins to change right across the industry. But more than anything, just a big thank you for highlighting that and showing the tech trends in the industry. Thanks for joining me today, David.
It's my pleasure. I enjoyed it very much. Look forward to chatting again.
A big thank you to David for sharing his vision to empower prospective home sellers to market and sell their homes themselves. And how for too long prospective home sellers have been forced to choose between two extremes on the home spectrum: that bloated full-service agent fees versus the daunting and uncertainty of having to navigate the home selling process independently on a world that you're not too familiar with. So it was interesting to learn why only 8% of prospective home sellers grapple with the prospect of marketing and selling their home themselves. But with the latest technological innovations that can create a more consumer-centric model while addressing the legacy sector issues that have placed too much power in the hands of full-service agents, maybe things can change for the better. And I think that can only be a good thing. But this is where I turn to you all listening, and especially if you're in the industry, listening to this podcast now, shouting into your phone, "No, Neil, you missed the point," or "You missed this impact." If that is you right now, I want you to harness that energy, hold on to it, bottle it up and send it over to me, because I want to get your voice and your message on this podcast too. So please, if that interests you, email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. My website is techblogwriter.co.uk. We'll get your voice on here, mix it in with mine and the guests, and maybe, just maybe, we can all learn a thing or two from each other. And in a world of binary thinking where everything's hot or cold and everyone's got to pick a side, I think that's a much more sensible way forward. But hey, I am an idealistic guy that was brought up on cheesy 80s TV shows. So, but on that note, I will thank you kindly for listening, and I'll speak with you all again tomorrow. So until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.